In this video, I'm breaking down every single jump, everything I know, honestly, movement related in the map Catalyst. Very pretty map, by the way. Of course, symmetrical map, so anything I cover on one side will be like 99.9% similar on the other side. There's a couple different things, but very pretty map, graphically, visually, looks like a Halo map. So just, you know, right off the bat, very big fan of how it turned out, but very open map as well, and kind of dangerous when it comes to movement. So that's why we're going to cover everything from this base all the way around the perimeter, everything I know. Let's get into it. Starting with the base, for the record, I don't know the callouts on this map just yet, and I think the pros are still figuring them out. So for now, this is just called base, and there's not really much to work with here. It's just very open. There's no cover. The only option you have if you spawn here is to sit behind one of these shoulders. You can do it on the other side, and of course on the other side of the map as well. You can tuck yourself pretty far back behind here and avoid the sightline completely, and then kind of poke out if somebody grabs your flag. I've seen people do it before. Don't really condone the play style, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do sometimes back here. You can shimmy off and re-clamber the ledge too if you hold forward on the left stick and hit clamber the moment you fall. Very risky. You're playing with your life here, especially if you don't have like a grapple or anything. But that's it for this section, and then you got the ramp. There's four main ways to approach this ramp, and you can apply this to basically any ramp in the game. The first one is to straight up just slide on the ramp, and there is some technique to sliding down ramps. The best timing for the best velocities sliding on a ramp is to time the slide near the top of the ramp, right as you come down, and you'll get the biggest boost, the farthest slide, if you're just going for a normal slide. You'll notice if I slide later, like kind of halfway through the ramp or closer to the bottom, then I just get a normal slide. I don't really get any momentum. So if you want, like I said, the best possible slide, just straight up, sprinting down it, you want to time that slide near the top of the ramp for a boost out. And this is something you can apply to any ramp. Just be careful, because the faster you go down, the farther you're going to go, and the less cover you're going to have if you're sliding down these ramps very quickly. So something to keep in mind. There's that way. The second way is the drop slide way. And this is what was patched, for the record. I still have to talk about the patch notes and everything, and I plan to when I'm not sick. In case you guys aren't aware, I tested positive for you-know-what. So this has been a tough week, but here we are. Anyway, this drop slide is simple to do. You sprint, jump, hold crouch in the air, land on the ramp and slide. This was nerfed in the patch, and you don't slide quite as far now as you used to. Basically, the nerf was the higher you fall from, the more velocity you have coming into the ramp, the more your velocity is reduced by this nerf, which doesn't really make sense physics-wise, but hey, man, that's what they did. If you want the fastest possible drop slide, what you want to do is the opposite. Try to land as low on the ramp with your drop slide as possible. So you would sprint, jump, hold crouch, and try to land as low as possible. And that's going to give you the best possible boost and the closest to the pre-patch drop slide. The third method would also be a drop slide, but it would be a sprint off way like this, where you would use the shoulder of the ramp, sprint, turn off, hold crouch in the air, and then land and slide. And this is a good way to get a more precise slide, and also a great way to cross the midsection of the map, which is something we'll look at in a second, by sprinting up and then dropping on the ramp. The fourth way, and this is the way that I use on my starting strat, is to curb slide down the ramp. Something like this. You can hit this faster, but essentially I'm going along the shoulder once again, but then turning off earlier and perfectly timing slide to get the power of a curb slide combined with the downward momentum of the ramp for the most powerful slide that you can get on this first ramp, and the best way to approach this ramp, in my opinion. Like that. And you can cut that either way. At this point, I've talked about the curb slide a few times in my videos. It's a tricky technique to master, and there's also a lot more depth to it than I think people realize. So I'm going to do my best to explain it in this video, because there's a lot of very cool slides on this map, more so than skill jumps, honestly. Just starting with this area, this is a good spot to practice curb sliding and even understand it if you're new, and get consistent at the mechanic, as ridiculous as I'm sure this looks right now. Note that this is not actually as powerful as this might look. Like, I can't shoot until now. Like, I'm foregoing my ability to place my reticle, unless somebody's like right here and I want to try to challenge him. I'm giving up first shot in a fight to move like this. So it's very risky, and it's good for a rotation if nobody's nearby, or if I want to throw myself into this angle and take a fight like this, then obviously very useful for speed. But in an actual gunfight with bad timing, you will die doing this. So just keep it in mind. but good practice nonetheless to understand the mechanic. What you need for a curb slide is a flat surface. That's very important. Any bumps that your Spartan kind of runs over can ruin your ability to slide. So thankfully this area is not too tall of a ledge and it's pretty flat. So you can either just kind of, you know, crouch jump. By the way, this is crouch jump height, and then just kind of sprint and time the slide like this, or do this special trick that I do, which is I line myself up parallel with the edge of the ledge and then turn off and slide. And that's something we'll revisit a little bit more later. So, sorry, just as a basic introduction to curb slide, you need a ledge like this that's slightly off the floor. Stand on top of it, sprint, hit the crouch button to slide, and that crouch timing is very important. If you look at my controller overlay, I click the left stick to crouch so you can see the timing. It's after I come off the object, and that timing varies depending on the object itself. Like this one right here, which is a shorter object closer to the floor, the timing to hit crouch is a little bit quicker, a little bit earlier. So just something to keep in mind. But this section in general, like I said, it's all crouch jump height for the most part. You can crouch jump around here. This one from the floor needs to be pretty well spaced. You can just kind of barely do it. These pillars also have a few ledges you can stand on. They're sort of tricky to get the hang of and not super useful, but this one right here, you can crouch jump to from the floor if you kind of just walk up the ramp a little bit and then try to like pinpoint the corner, and then you can use it to get back up that way, or jump from above on the jump up and just hold into the wall and it works. There's ledges that are sort of blocked off at the same time. Like they tried to block this one, but for some reason you can stand on this one specifically. The others you can't. Like just this one works. Like if I go to the other side and I try to stand on this, some invisible blocker will push me off of it, as you can see. Despite the blocker pushing me off, it is possible to jump off it and just get your feet on it long enough just for a jump backwards. And the trick that I have to do that is I push myself into the wall of the pillar and crouch, hold crouch, and then jump backwards right when I kind of feel my feet hit it. And you can do this while keeping your reticle placed and taking a fight the whole time, which could be very useful to know. So you push your body forward into the wall and then crouch jump up onto the little ledge and jump backwards. But this one, for whatever reason, is the only pillar that has this side of it that can be stood on. So something to keep in mind. You can hang out up here. What's also interesting is the trade-off with this pillar is that the other side of it, this little ledge on top, is completely blocked and impossible, as far as I can tell, to stand on or jump off of, whereas the other side of every other pillar can be stood on. So you can stand on this. And I'm using a grapple to kind of get me in place. Obviously, this would be a weird use of your grapple, but you can stand on the other side. And I do believe it's possible to precisely kind of crouch jump around it, but it's just I can't think of a scenario where it would make there you go, you can still do it. So if you got crazy movement, like who knows, maybe you could, like a monkey, shimmy from one wall to the next, and the other side, it works, the other side of the map as well. Just this one pillar has this one side that is inaccessible, but the other that is. So I don't know what happened with this pillar, like an oversight or something. Lastly, there's these little pegs on the outside of the pillar that could be jumped on as well. You got to kind of like jump around the geometry here and like land on them. They're not very easy to jump on. Once again, not really sure how useful or if they are ever going to be useful in your game. But you could, I guess, potentially, like from up above in a fight, jump to it and then jump back on into the fight, I guess. What is a shame, though, is they are perfect spring jump height off the ground. So this would have been a sick jump to spring jump from the floor, land on it, and then jump back, but rip spring jumping. If you're on these shoulders, by the way, you can always sprint jump off of it and then clamber to the other side. You can do it on this side here as well. It just barely reaches. A little bit tight timing, but it works. This shoulder in general is kind of like slippery and awkward to navigate, so you just got to be careful when you crouch jump up to it. What I tend to do is focus my jump to the inside like this, and it sets you up for a pretty powerful curb slide down the front. Now, when or how you'd incorporate this, once again, I don't know. It is possible, though. Like if you get a kill and you pinpoint that jump to this side of the pillar and then sprint and time the crouch, that's a pretty useful little rotation to quickly get the flag. It's just very difficult. And once again, kind of like a slippery ledge to work with, but something to keep in mind. Sprinting up the shoulder the other way is the only way I'm aware of that will allow you to skip the center of the map in a single drop slide. Pretty precise to do and very risky. If you miss it, you fall off and you die. And I've seen a few people die off the opening strat doing this, but the objective is to land as low as possible on the ramp below by sprinting as high as possible on the shoulder above. So you want to sprint off on the left here and try to go as far and as high with that sprint as possible so that you land very low on the ramp. We've hit it 3 times, which is good. Usually, I've done this so many times that I can tell if I hit the ramp in the right way, if I'll make it or not. Like, well, that definitely won't. But I've got a pretty good gauge on whether or not I hit the right part of the ramp below. That won't make it. And what I can do is just not jump instead and just, slide off to the bridge and survive. To be honest, this is probably why they nerfed the drop slide, just so you don't have the ability to conveniently cross this gap out center, which I get. I think it's just kind of weird that they nerfed it preemptively instead of allowed us to experience the map with the more powerful drop slide just to see how it played. Because note that in the end of the day, this is very risky to do, right? Like if I want to set up a drop slide on this ramp, I can't shoot until after I slide. So if somebody's waiting for me on the other side with their reticle placed, they can shoot me for free. Same with this setup. As I'm coming down, I can only shoot now. That's the earliest I can start. And then I still die because I missed the jump, right? So it's just, there's a lot of risk that you're taking on to do this in the first place. But yeah, in the end, the only possible way would be sprinting off the shoulder, landing on the ramp. And that essentially covers the movement on one base. There's one more strat that I'll show, and this is actually the fastest strat to get to OS off the start. You can do it off of a spawn as well. It works on this podium and on the other side as well. It involves sprinting and perfectly lining up a drop onto the very edge of this ledge and nicking your heels on the edge of it so that you can curb slide out to bottom mid. This is very precise and very difficult to line up. We did still hit it. I didn't quite go as far as you could. You can go straight into bottom mid and land in bottom mid beside OS, and I'll have some footage to show of it. It's just very difficult to recreate, and the tech here is pretty interesting as well. This ledge normally is too tall to curb slide off of. It's like impossible basically to curb slide off of unless you do this trick where you land on it from above out of sprint and just nick your heels, and what happens is when you hit the edge of it, it kind of like knocks you down a level, and it makes curb sliding possible on this very tall ledge. And it also launches you out very far. You can do this on Bazaar off the opening strat on Bazaar as well, which is even more difficult to line up. But really interesting tech. And this is something you can apply on every single map. There's a lot of very high ledges that can be curb slid, I guess, off of that nobody is sliding off of because the precision is just, the risk outweighs the reward. But there's some depth here that I think is unexplored, which is really cool. Whether or not we'll see somebody actually apply this in a game, I don't know, but give it a shot. See if you can pull it off. Here we hit it again. And that'll get me to, or kill me, right? Like because of the momentum, I almost killed myself. So, risk reward. Next, we got this hallway. There's this object here we saw earlier. You can curb slide off it for a fast rotate. We've also got the lower part you can slide off. For a fast rotate, you can slide the other direction to flag if you want. There's like a nerdy slide you can do off of it to get to the jump up ledge on the wall and just land on it. You could maybe like take a fight and slide off at the same time if you're like Shotzi or something. I don't know. This ledge, by the way, is step jump height and not super useful to know, but I think it's always good to keep like an eye out for ledges that are step jump height just in case. Step jumping is a setting that you can turn on, by the way. You have to push your body into a low height surface like this, and while holding forward, hit jump, and it perfectly steps you up onto the edge. And the height where a step jump will register is very specific. Like this is too tall, but this will work. But even like a tiny little baby step will still step jump up. It's just once you get out of range, you get a normal jump. So just understanding the range of it, like this is step jump height, but this isn't. Interestingly enough. So depending on the situation, and you can do it at a crouch too, you might be able to kind of like crouch and step jump your way up onto this object, and then once you're on it, you can slide off it immediately instead of having to like moon jump land on it. It might be faster. So it's situational, but it's always good to keep in mind like where you can step jump. You can curb slide down this ramp, or you can drop slide. Time one like down here for a different angle. This section of the map has a bunch of slides and sneaky spots, so real quick I'm just going to show stuff. You've got step jump here. You can slide off of this in like any direction. You can slide off of it. Use it as like a quick challenge. You can slide this way and send yourself like off the map basically if you want to. You can time slides at the top of every one of these ramps. You can time one for a pretty fast boost. Same as the top of this ramp as well. You can, standing up here, sprint off, land, and drop slide on the ramp below for a pretty quick rotate. Or you can do like a pretty nerdy curb slide if you kind of push back, make sure you got your back against the wall, and then sprint slide and time it like it's a curb slide, and it'll combine the two, and you'll get like a really fast slide combined with like the downward ramp. But awkward, kind of awkward to hit in time. There we go again. Useful to know, though. But just a standard drop slide, I think, is pretty effective. Just landing on the ramp and doing a regular slide will do you pretty well. You can, from this area, jump and clamber to this side. This is all crouch jump height, of course, as well. You can just crouch jump straight up. When you are up here, I think always keep in mind the nades that you can shoot as you come out. Your reticle should be placed, like, considering this. I think if somebody's walking out and he's near the nades, then you can always shoot it, do some damage to start a fight. Could be useful. Just being aware of, like, where you should be looking, too, as you kind of navigate this map. Like, this is something you should be practicing and training is, you know, coming through these areas quickly and then having your reticle in the right place as early as possible so you are ready for a fight. Once you're up here, you can jump and cross this gap with a standard jump. I recommend doing a sprint jump for a slightly farther jump. The issue is it's very difficult to, like, look at bridge, let's say, and stay looking at bridge the whole time and still make the jump. You can, like, hold crouch to just barely make it, but in general, you kind of want to, like, sprint jump and look away for a second and then look back. When you're on these ramps, you can time slides near the top for a fast boost down each one of these ramps once again. Like a quick kind of launch down if you time it near the top. And then we got a really nerdy curb slide setup. Now, this is a special setup and something I recommend you pay attention to. I don't see many people applying this, and I don't see pros using it as well. And I do think the future of the meta in this game will involve this setup that I'm using, because it allows me to, like, maintain reticle placement and shoot while I curb slide back and forth, which is pretty insane if you think about it. You've got a lot more mobility and damage potential if you can master something like this. So how does it work? What I'm doing is I'm forcing a fast fall, basically. There is a fast fall mechanic in Halo Infinite where if you're standing on the edge of a ledge and you tap off, you walk off, you'll notice the Spartan falls very quickly, just like that. Super quick fall. And you can apply this, by the way, in just standard gunfights. Like, try to jump, land on an edge of something, and shoot the whole time, fall off. And that abrupt fall can maybe throw off somebody's aim, but it's an interesting, unique mechanic that only Halo Infinite has, is this, like, fast fall ability. And it seems to trigger the most aggressively if you land right on the tip, the very edge of the ledge, and then tap off, you're going to fall off very quickly. Now, I've noticed that that fast fall is what converts into very high speed, powerful drop slides, like this one right here. It's that downward momentum that's allowing me to throw myself extremely far, extremely quickly on extremely tall ledges. I'm forcing that fast fall. And to force it, what I'm doing is I'm jumping and perfectly trying to land on the edge, just like this, and then timing a very late slide out of a sprint off of it. And it can be very difficult to do this, as you can see, to jump and, like, perfectly land on the edge of the object. You don't always have, like, the luxury. You might be in the middle of a fight trying to do that. So the beauty of this setup is what I'm doing is I call it a guaranteed setup. I'm forcing a fast fall state by like using the wall essentially to hold me in place so that I can very easily land on the edge of an object. And that's kind of the beauty of this, is I walk out and I place my reticle and then push backwards and jump while kind of holding into the wall to kind of balance me, and then land on the edge, sprint slide forward, and I get the launch. And this setup you can apply anywhere on any ledge. For this one, because of the setup, like because of the height of the ledge, I don't have to hold crouch or do anything fancy. I just jump backwards and land on it pretty quickly. But for other lower ledges, you can employ different techniques. Like right here, I can hold crouch. So I jump from a crouch position for a lower altitude jump. And then when I'm in the air, I release crouch so that my feet, so I'm standing and my feet hit the ledge earlier. And that's like the fastest way to put my feet on that ledge and set me up for a very powerful slide off with a fast fall involved, if that makes sense. So for specific ones like this one right here, push into the wall, and there you go. I can set myself up to hit very powerful slides this way. Overall, in my opinion, this is some of the coolest, most unique tech, not only in Halo Infinite, but across every Halo game in the franchise. Just the way that this slide mechanic works with ledges and geometry, and the fact that these fast rotations are limited to your knowledge of the map and your tools in your environment, and then your skill and your precision to pull it off, and all the risks that come with it. I just think the balance of it all is a really cool evolution of Halo Slide. So give it a shot. There's already plenty of different locations. I'm using this setup across all the maps, and I guarantee we'll see a lot more of it in the future. In the meantime, there's still plenty more to talk about with this map. So real quick, I'm going to try to speed up the pace here. There is a sneaky spot that you can stand on both sides of repulsor here. And this spot, honestly, very interesting. And it's something I wonder if they will patch, because just as far as readability goes for skill jumps, there is no readability to this. There's no ledge whatsoever to showcase that I can go down here. So my thought would be, can they add a ledge? Maybe. But what does this do to gameplay, right? Does this take away from gameplay? Does it benefit gameplay to be able to hide out here, right? It doesn't really benefit anyone being able to hide out here. It could be useful maybe to avoid like a nade explosion briefly and then come back in. So I don't hate it by any means, but the idea of players hiding and slowing down gameplay, it never really feels like a good, productive thing for gameplay. So let me know what you guys think about a spot like this in the comments. It's very easy to get into. You literally just walk out and hug the wall, and you can sit here. And, you know, maybe they can add a ledge. Maybe they can add a 10-second kill barrier to this section of the map so you can use it, but you can't abuse it. I don't know. Let me know. Here's another little skill jump. Shout out to Skizma on Twitter for showing me this. I was not aware of it. You can sprint up this rock for a prop upwards and then do a late jump and reach this ledge for a clamber up above. Now, whether or not it's useful definitely depends on the situation. It's not too difficult. You just sprint into it and late jump up. The issue is how vulnerable and exposed you are as you go for this jump. Say somebody's in that doorway, they can just cross you up for free, right? So very kind of, you know, limited opportunity to use this, but maybe right after a repulsor pickup and just as like a clean rotation, you might be able to find use for it. In general, and I know this is a movement-focused video, but this little lip is a super useful location to consider banking a nade. And it's something that I think you should look out for on every map. Every map's got very efficient bank nade setups, like live fire beside the scoreboard, for example. And it's always something you want to keep a mental note of. Just a jump nade will bank that nade into the doorway for an explosion. That stuff can be very useful. More nerdy stuff. This section of the map, in my opinion, is the best spot to use the step jump mechanic, mainly because step jumping is very weird here. You'll notice that as I step jump up, there's airtime before I hit the ledge, which never typically happens. Whenever I step jump on any other object, it's a perfect step up onto the edge. But this one on both sides is like glitched or something. I'm not sure. You can take advantage of that, though, and what you can do is sprint, slide, and step jump at a crouch and do it immediately and still make it up to the edge because of this weird extra altitude you're getting off of this specific step jump, if that makes sense. Normally, if I was to slide and jump at a crouch, like step jump at a crouch on a ledge this height, I would not make it up because the slide and my timing and just the momentum that I have and the low altitude of the jump would just, I don't know, it doesn't make it up normally in any other situation. But because this area is like glitched or something, I can full speed slide into it and step jump immediately. And that also means I can shoot the whole time as I do this too. So there's some kind of cool, unique movement with the step jump in this section of the map somehow. Just to round out all the slides in this section of the map, you can slide in this area in so many different ways, however you see fit, like kind of cutting down the ramps just like this and coming out quickly. This can be slid on as well. It's a little bit too tall to slide the normal way, but if you use the technique that I talked about where you jump and kind of land right on the edge, it is possible to slide out quickly that way. Of course, you're very vulnerable, very exposed when you set that up, so really think about like when you would ever do that, if ever. Because this is sloped downwards, it's so steep, you can just sprint right down it and just worry about the timing of your slide to boost out. The later that you time that slide, before it being like too late, if that makes sense, the better your launch is going to be. If you slide too late, you'll get a normal slide. But if you can find that perfect sweet spot timing, you can get a pretty nice boost And because of that downward slope, your slide is consistent. It's always going to work coming into curb sliding. You don't have to worry about like a bump or anything to kind of mess up your momentum. So pretty cool section to just kind of work on your consistency. You can slide up the ramp as well because of how steep it is, and because of this over jump mechanic, which I'll explain in a little bit. You can, if you perfectly line up your jump and hold crouch to slide, you can basically launch up the ramp the other direction, which is pretty cool and maybe useful as well. If you are at the top of this, you can time a slide near the top, just like any other ramp, and shoot straight down the ramp. Because it's so steep, you shoot down pretty quickly. Technically, if you're like, you know, pretty nerdy, maybe you can chain 2 slides together, like I just tried to do. I don't know if you'd ever have time or an opportunity to do it, but slide once and then somehow have that slide stop in position to hit the second one, and who knows what you could put together. You can get pretty nerdy here. Once you're up on this ramp, you can slide out both directions, and depending on the timing and the angle, you're going to get different results. Like that's a very powerful one. I did that one pretty nicely. Sometimes that won't happen. I'm kind of using the slant to come off on a diagonal to throw me out. The alternative would be to approach it in the way that I showed earlier, when you land on the very edge, and this can be very tough, but the result would be a much bigger slide. And the only way this is going to work is if you can pinpoint that edge and then sprint, perfectly time the crouch low to the ground, and, you know, jump to kind of throw yourself out. You can use the back of this as well. You can use this area for a slide too. Like there's so many different creative and nerdy ways you can apply slides depending on the situation to, you know, make an outplay or make a fast rotation. It's just all about your consistency and your creativity, really just kind of exploring and understanding this stuff. Almost forgot, you can jump clamber straight up to sword just by jumping and clambering off this box here. You can also do it straight up like this, which is a lot more difficult to pinpoint. No crouch or anything involved. I just jump, hold clamber, and get up. You just got to kind of fade back when you do this, and don't bump your head or miss this, or you might fall off the map and die. So keep that in mind. And that basically covers the whole map. You can also drop slide like I just did off the top there to land on the ramp as we go to the last section here. This is definitely a last but not least section of the map. Some of the nerdiest tech on this entire map is right here on grapple side. So if you made it this far, I recommend you don't click away. But this first jump is actually the jump I use in the beginning of the movement sequence I showed on YouTube, where I start by sprinting, jumping, and hitting a slide at the top of this ledge, and it shoots me out at a high speed, and I connect that into a seamless crouch jump to skip this clamber, hit this pedestal, and I do it while I'm kind of like looking left and right, trying to, you know, sell it basically. But it's such a clean little sequence, and it takes advantage of yet another secret mechanic, I guess, in Halo Infinite's code, or whatever you want to say. It's called overjumping, but it's not quite overjump. It's like overjumping plus a slide is what I'm doing. Now, overjumping I've never explained on YouTube before, but it's a special technique that involves sprinting and jumping and perfectly lining up your jump with the edge of a surface so that your feet just kind of kiss the edge and you start sprinting instantly. The best place to showcase this is in the alleyway on Bazaar. There's a little ledge on the floor, and you have to sprint, jump, and hit it so that your feet perfectly hit it and you sprint immediately is all I can really say. That one moment when your feet connect and you start the sprint, there's a pop-up animation that happens, a tiny little prop upwards. That little prop up is what gives you extra height for a follow-up jump called an overjump, and allows you to do some pretty crazy stuff that we've seen, you know, Bubba and J-Ton and some of the movement trick jumpers put together. Now, it's very difficult to apply this tech because it's so precise. The timing is so challenging. But this ledge, what's so cool about this ledge is this is completely unique to Halo Infinite. I have never seen a ledge that's sloped in this way. And because it's sloped in this way, overjumping is not only easier to hit, but sliding, and you can call it like over sliding. Apparently that's already a technique name, but I think the trick jumpers are calling it the over curb, where I'm basically timing a slide with a perfect timed over jump with this ledge. It's confusing, as you can tell. And it's sending me out at a high speed because of the slope of this ledge. The cool thing about this is when we get forged down the line, we could add more ledges like this. And this skill gap could be more impactful and seen more in the game. It really just depends on what ledge is offered. So there's some really cool tech opportunity at play here for the future of this game off of little ledges that are sloped like this. Anyway, the point is, with a well-timed slide, this ledge will give you a pretty powerful boost, and you can apply that boost to jump to this pedestal without a clamber pretty seamlessly, and you can also look out center map while you do it. Or you can just use the boost to boost, right? Like, you don't have to jump with it. Just having that little extra momentum could be useful for a challenge, useful for really anything you want to use it for. But pretty cool, and something we've never really seen in this way until Catalyst gave us an object that was shaped like that. More slides that you can do, by the way, that are pretty nerdy. If you shimmy out to the edge here, it makes it a little bit easier to slide down like straight forward or to slide out on an angle. And I find that sliding on an angle is particularly useful here because it sets you up with a second slide off the wall. And I know we're getting kind of crazy at this point, but the trick I was thinking is you slide out, shoot, and shooting can be happening throughout this entire sequence. Whether or not it makes sense to do this ever depends on the situation, depends on where the enemies are, what you're expecting, the timing you've got, whatever. Because you got no cover when you're flying out, but it's just, I'm just theory crafting, right? What can you put together with the tech at your disposal? Here's another one that's really great, is right here to send you out at a pretty high speed. This ledge, normally, this ledge is too tall to approach in the traditional way. You want to approach it by lining yourself up with it horizontally like I just did here, and then turning off and sliding. But because of this downward ramp above it, it's giving you this like extra downward momentum and more leeway, basically, to hit it just straight up, just to sprint in and slide. I don't fully understand, you know, what is going on behind the hood with stuff like this. I just, after enough time practicing, it all starts to kind of make sense. But I think it's just the downward ramp here that makes this slide possible, and then, of course, you need that perfect crouch timing to shoot yourself out. I think it's safe to say at this point you guys understand. The world is your oyster. Anything that is a ledge that looks like it could be slid off of can probably be slid off of. You can take these ramps and use them on an angle to shoot yourself into this hallway. You can even use the ramp going up it, and depending on how you time the slide, you got to remember that upward momentum is what you don't want typically before these slides. So you got to kind of finesse your way around the ramp to find the right angle that'll give you the boost you're looking for. You've also got these ledges here. There's kind of like two parts to these ledges, so you want to be wary because there's like two steps to it. So you can either kind of straight up sprint off or try to line something up like on an angle off the bottom of it. And remember, when you're doing all this, you got to be ready to take fights. You got to have your reticle placed in the right spots. You can't just be looking at the floor trying to line up slides all the time. But that's all part of the risk reward and understanding of this mechanic. Once you grab grapple or whatever, if you're standing back here, you can very carefully shimmy into this corner and just sit in here, similar to the other side of the map. You can't go as far, but just something to know. You can shimmy in here as well and then jump back in if you need to. Just a couple more jumps in this area from this center lane. You can jump and skip your clamber to this side right here and then jump clamber straight up. You can also jump back. It would have to be like a low altitude jump, like a slide jump like that to reach it normally. As far as I'm aware, you cannot reach this from the floor. You can jump clamber from about here and still get up, but from this section, it doesn't quite work. And I wish it would. If there was like a spring jump or like some sort of special technique you could use to get up, it'd be convenient. From the platform, you can reach it though, like I showed. And then from here, if somebody's like bottom mid, I was thinking maybe you could hit them with like a reclamber. Use your high ground to drop back and clamber back to the ledge. From the floor, you can clamber this as well. It's difficult to line up. You're timing a jump at the very top of the ramp, sprinting, and you can kind of feel your feet go over it, and it pops you up. And then you time a late jump and just barely reach the clamber. Whether or not this is useful, I think, really depends on what your awareness is of people on the other side of this pedestal, because you're kind of giving up reticle placement trying to line this thing up, you know? That essentially covers it. Once we're up here, and you've got the sniper, or skewer is what it normally is, you can reach this with a sprint jump as well. Just a late jump at a sprint, and you'll get to the platform. Don't slide or anything. It'll screw up your jump distance, because if you just barely miss it, then you will not make it to the top. There are no jumps that I'm aware of on top mid here. Nothing really to speak of. I was thinking it'd be cool if you could jump off this little edge, and I showed this on my live stream. I think this is a really cool collision opportunity on the map, but unfortunately there is no collision here. It'd be sick if, like, narrows, like top mid narrows, you could shimmy along the wall and connect and jump to the bridge, or even from the sniper platform, jump to this section and jump off of it and then jump to bridge. Like, I don't know, just some creative playmaking opportunity that unfortunately this map doesn't have. But as you can see, there's still plenty to work with here. And that's it. That's all I've got for map movement on Catalyst, not including the repulsor and the grapple. I'll save that for another video, because if I include those, then this is going to be what, like a 40-minute video, and this is already a very long video. I'm not sure how long I've kept you guys, but honestly, if you've stayed this long, thank you for watching. You now know all the secrets. This is everything I know on this map. Even this slide right here I didn't show. You can go up this ramp, but there's nothing that I don't know that I haven't revealed in this video. So have at it. Enjoy. Hopefully you guys, found something useful from this and something that you can apply to other maps as well. I'd say Catalyst, as pretty and as fun as it can be to navigate movement-wise, this is one of the lighter maps as far as what's available for tech and skill jumps, etc. I think all the other maps pretty much have more jumps, more slides to worry about. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot you can apply elsewhere with this. So let me know what you guys think. If you're going to be using this tech, if you like it, if you hate it, whatever, let's discuss in the comments. Hit sub if you like this content. We are less than 300 subs away from 50,000, which is a pretty crazy milestone. So welcome if you're a new sub. Like the video if you haven't done so already, and check out related content. I'll see you guys again soon.